I consider this to really be one of the chief threats that we have to the natural resources of this area.
Taken in combination with the other exotics that are moving into the corridors, it is always mind-boggling that we are losing so much so quickly.
The problem with invasions is that we'll lose things that are uniquely Californian in terms of species and in terms of ecosystems.
Alien species are getting a lot more attention these days. These are organisms that have been introduced or accidentally moved from one place or ecosystem to another. Whether you call them alien, exotic, non-native, or non-indigenous, these organisms can become terrific invaders and cause major ecological problems. Introduced species are now known to be a leading factor in the decline and extinction of indigenous species. Some of the really aggressive invaders are even being called biological pollution that damage the health of entire ecosystems. Scientists and conservationists believe that California's biological diversity and ecological integrity are being seriously compromised. This program examines the problem of invasive alien plants and what is being done about some of them in California. The issues are not simple, nor are the solutions easy or cheap, but the threats are real, and the changes or losses can be forever.
California, the Golden State. Our parks and natural areas inspire awe in the millions who visit them. Our environmental awareness and conscience have generated laws which have often led the nation and world. We have done much to protect our environment, yet our natural heritage is still at risk. Habitat loss and fragmentation from development may still be the biggest problem. However, a less obvious problem has grown into a tremendous challenge. Introduced species, often plants, are sweeping over our state, degrading parks and other remnant natural areas. California, with its great wealth of native biodiversity, has been especially hard hit. Actually, the problem is global.
If you blur the distinctiveness of the biota, if you move species around the Earth more or less promiscuously, the effect is that species that are good weeds interact with us very well and spread everywhere, and species that do things a little differently and are narrowly adapted to particular areas lose in the competition. So we lose biological diversity and we lose the regional identity.
The scope of this problem is better understood by reviewing some Earth history. About 180 million years ago, the supercontinent Pangaea began to break apart into the continents we know today. Isolated by vast oceans and deep time, the flora and fauna of each continent followed different evolutionary trajectories. This helps to explain why herbivores in North America look so different from those in Australia, even though they have similar ecological niches. California life has also been rather isolated from the rest of North America by forbidding deserts and hostile mountain ranges. Then, at the end of the last ice age, less than 20,000 years ago, people spread throughout the world. Over the last 500 years, with global exploration, trade, and travel, we have, in effect, biologically reconnected the continents. This has resulted in an unprecedented mixing or homogenization of many of the world's life forms. Clearly, humans have benefited greatly from introduced species. Rice, native to Southeast Asia and now grown in our Central Valley, is but one of thousands of examples of useful species. But like this garden snail from Europe, many introduced species can be quite harmful to gardens and native ecosystems. Black rats and fleas are disease vectors and have also been spread around the world. Plague, a pathogen, was introduced through them into Western North America around the turn of the century. Surprisingly, many harmful alien species are plants. Those plants that spread into natural or undisturbed areas, like this European beach grass in our coastal dune ecosystems, are called invasive exotics, or wildland weeds. Again, the problem of alien invasions is now truly global. The number of native species in California includes more than 5,000 plants. 1,600 of these are endemic or found only in California. There are also some 190 mammals, over 400 species of birds, 130 reptiles and amphibians, and 66 species of freshwater fish. Add to that 1,000 kinds of lichen and mosses, 5,000 fungi, and tens of thousands of species of insects and other invertebrates. Their progenitors got here on their own and co-evolved with each other into very complex ecosystems. Since our state and national parks only cover 6% of California's land, it is important that we manage them carefully. Certainly on these lands, native biodiversity ought to be given priority. For national parks, Congress has made this a mandate. This is tamarisk, or salt cedar. Here at the lower Colorado River, the banks and floodplain are totally dominated by this alien species. Early settlers introduced tamarisk from the Mediterranean 150 years ago, using it as an ornamental. Later it was used to help control erosion. It naturalized, and by the 1920s it was spreading rapidly across the western states. Tamarisk now occupies over 1.5 million acres of riparian or streamside habitat. Part of the explanation for this massive invasion is that water diversions and development have favored tamarisk over native species. However, it has invaded many areas that were largely unaltered by people. In California's desert bioregion, this includes Anza Borrego Desert State Park.
We have no shortage of areas that are infested with tamarisk in the entire Southwest, and indeed here in Anza Borrego as well. And in one case, we found 34 bighorn waiting their turn to drink out of a couple-gallon spring, which had been surrounded by tamarisk.
In the desert, a small spring can support a wealth of native species and serve desert wildlife over an area of thousands of acres. When tamarisk invades these springs, it displaces the native plants. Its high transpiration rate can dry out the spring. Its deep roots draw up salts, which can sterilize the surface soil.
We do a transect in a natural, undisturbed ecosystem across a riparian corridor, for instance. We may find 30 or 40 or 50 native plants in that transect. If you have a stand that is what we call a monoculture of tamarisk, 100%, you have virtually eliminated natural diversity in that plot.
Animals suffer too. This includes the desert bighorn sheep, which rely heavily on these precious springs. Tamarisk is tenacious. It grows fast and can resprout from a broken branch. Tamarisk is also prolific. One tree can live to 40 and produce 500,000 seeds each year. Tiny and windborne, the seeds have helped to spread the plant like wildfire. Thus, the task to control tamarisk is no small challenge.
We concentrate on point water sources. They're vital to bighorn sheep, and we have a massive project underway at the north end of the park. Our strategy being that we go to the high point of the watershed and then we work downstream. So far we have not found any method that is not chemical based.
The work is hard, but the dedication to the purpose goes beyond the pay.
I think that we're all proud of the wilderness and the state and all the habitats of the state that we live in, and that we want to preserve them and make sure that they are there for our kids.
Nor will this be a one-time effort.
Once we're determined to kill tamarisk trees in a site, we have to be dedicated to that management activity forever. The biggest effort and the most expensive effort is at first control. After that, when we are on a maintenance level, then the costs per acre come way down.
Also grappling with this problem is Ocotillo Wells State Vehicular Recreation Area, where tamarisk has been silently spreading through the washes. While providing off-road recreation, the Off-Highway Division also has a mission to conserve our state's natural resources within vehicular recreation areas. At Joshua Tree National Park, even remote wilderness sites are under siege.
People don't realize that national parks, they're not islands, but they interact with what's going on our borders, and we have to be conscious of what might be coming into the park and how we can minimize these types of impacts.
After a 2-hour hike, high school students and other volunteers will spend the next several hours removing an early infestation of tamarisk. Using hand tools on these tough little trees is no picnic. But there is lunch. Once the biological pollution of Tamarisk is cleared, the water here is expected to flow in greater abundance. In addition to benefiting the bighorn and other desert natives, the volunteers are learning some valuable lessons.
It's a great feeling to see that we can come out here and actually make a difference in keeping this area, which is part of the national park system now, a pristine place which can be a refuge for all sorts of animals in the future.
In the South Coast bioregion, remnant natural areas are being invaded by a variety of alien plants.
We have a great diversity of exotic plants of concern. There is harding grass, which is a large perennial bunch grass that's overtaking a lot of our native California grasslands. We have a relatively new invader called peppergrass that is taking over along riparian edges. We have a large shrub called myoporum that comes from Australia that is invading into our coastal areas and the salt marsh areas. We also have ailanthus, or tree of heaven. We also have castor bean, fennel, arundo, a number of exotic annual grasses.
The exotics also have other ripple effects.
Plant invasions are definitely affecting natural processes, ecological processes. Some of them are ones that might be more prone to fire. Some of them are plants that use up a tremendous amount of water. Some of the plants actually contain compounds that prevent the native plants from growing all around them. There's a whole host of effects.
To help state parks fend off these aggressive invaders, the California Native Plant Society has forged a small corps of dedicated volunteers.
Behind us is a riparian area that has been almost totally choked out with castor bean. The California Native Plant Society was very concerned about the effect of castor beans in the riparian areas of the state parks here along the Malibu coast. We're using what is known as a Bradley method of identifying important native vegetation that has been encroached upon by the non-native species. We're clearing a ring around the healthy laurel sumacs and the sagebrush.
Again, some chemicals are used, but not without much consideration.
I came to view the judicious use of some of the more safe herbicides as an absolutely essential tool in the arsenal.
Efforts of the California Native Plant Society have had results. For instance, here at Liberty Canyon in Malibu Creek State Park, a serious infestation of ailanthus, or tree of heaven, was successfully eradicated. This old valley oak was in a bad situation.
It was completely surrounded by tree of heaven.
Introduced into California as a fast-growing shade tree, ailanthus can grow 10 feet in a year.
It was a wonderful tree for the early settlers.
However, ailanthus was later found to be quite invasive into natural habitats. It took several years to refine the eradication technique.
It went from a very extremely labor-intensive process while we were learning into a system that should be fairly efficient now.
And the results are in.
We've had fabulous results. The willows have come back. You've seen this tree reform itself and create its canopy.
Over at Malibu Lagoon State Park, California Native Plant Society weed warriors have aided greatly in restoration efforts. Yet the struggle continues. Another tree species is the intruder. Here, myoporum, a common ornamental that is somewhat salt-tolerant, has no respect for this park's boundaries. To prevent the park from being completely taken over by this admittedly attractive alien, a special breed of weed warrior is called into action.
Trees don't belong everywhere. Most Californians don't realize that it's the invasion by these exotic species which is responsible for tremendous loss of natural habitat. It's hard work. It's good exercise, and you don't need to go to a gym for a workout.
For other volunteers, the rewards of physical fitness are only the beginning.
I feel I can make a difference. I enjoy it. I like the people I meet, and I'm learning a lot. But moreover, I feel I'm leaving a legacy for my children, and that's very important to me.
Such dedication has not gone unnoticed by state park managers.
I cannot stress enough the importance of volunteers in this effort. We've been paying catch-up for many, many long years of inaction. State Parks is not always able to respond immediately to some of these exotic plant threats. The Los Angeles Santa Monica Mountains chapter of the California Native Plant Society is truly a leader in the Los Angeles area in educating people about the threats to native ecosystems that exotic plants can pose, and setting the example by putting their own hard work into the effort. And we're very, very grateful for that help.
Meet yellow star thistle. Native to Eurasia, it probably arrived here as a contaminant of alfalfa or animal feed. First found growing in the Oakland Hills in 1869, it spread slowly but surely. Its seeds mixed with hay, stuck to vehicles, animals, boots, and other items. In recent years, it has spread with alarming vigor.
I would say today, yellow star thistle probably infests 10 to 12 million acres of California, and that represents about 10 to 12% of the surface area of the state.
It loves highly disturbed sites like vacant lots, roadsides, and pastures. But yellow star thistle also invades rangelands and meadows that are largely undisturbed. Yellow star thistle is not without its virtues. It makes good honey, and its deep taproot can prevent soil erosion. However, the success of this newcomer has been at the expense of many others.
It's fairly obvious when you go into these areas that the number of native species are very, very low, in some cases none, in these areas, and that the total number of species within these areas has been reduced.
For people, it's just no fun to play in. For horses, yellow star thistle is toxic. If eaten for several weeks, it can cause brain lesions and the inability to eat. Once the symptoms of chewing disease show up, it is pretty much fatal. Control efforts and research are underway. Perhaps most ambitious is the biological control program underway by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. Biological control is the use of natural enemies to reduce weed or pest populations.
In a nutshell, the strategy is to go to the country of origin, find its natural enemies, bring them into this country with the idea of creating a new balance such that the plant becomes rare or uncommon.
After extensive safety testing and quarantine, some gall flies and weevils have been approved and released.
We have 3 agents that attack the head at a very immature stage, and we have 3 agents that attack the yellow star thistle head at a much later stage. And the idea is that they will complement each other, and that those they miss by one group will be attacked later by the second group.
It's too early to tell if these biocontrol agents will eat yellow star thistle into rarity in perpetuity. If they do, the expense of this effort will pay long-term dividends. In the meantime, other work to control yellow star thistle is underway. Some success has been achieved with grazing and mowing, but if they are not timed right, the weed will grow back with a vengeance. At Sugarloaf Ridge State Park in the Central Coast bioregion, another angle of attack is underway. Here within the Oaks, some 400 acres of diverse grasslands have been overrun by yellow star thistle in a scant 10 years. Beginning in 1993, controlled burns were used in an attempt to clear the area of this noxious invader.
The goal, of course, is to restore the perennial grasslands and have an absence of yellow star thistle.
On this day, over 300 acres were burned.
As we're stem girdling these plants by conducting these fires and prohibiting any new seed production, we've also stimulated tremendous germination from the seed bank in the soil. After monitoring the results from 3 annual consecutive fires, we've seen a 99% reduction in the yellow star thistle seed bank in the soil at 5 centimeters depth. So that's quite remarkable. We also have an increase of over 200% of the perennial and native components in the park.
Other advantages of using fire include its low cost for large areas treated and no risk of synthetic chemical residues. Since many of California's natural communities evolved with frequent low-intensity fires for thousands of years, this approach may enhance their recovery. Used properly, controlled burning has promise for other areas.
The timing seems to be really essential here.
The research that's been conducted here documents that it's really the favorable management technique for the park grasslands.
There are other harmful alien species, and all parts of California are affected in one way or another. Here, German ivy, actually a species from South Africa, is carpeting a streamside in the North Coast bioregion. The invasion of German ivy is in its early stages, and it is feared that it will choke out coastal riparian ecosystems up and down the state.
German ivy is a really major threat to riparian corridors. and apparently now to surrounding habitat as well. And it is probably taking out more riparian habitat. In fact, it's definitely taking out more riparian habitat than development is. Taken by itself, it is an incredibly serious threat. Taken in combination with the other exotics that are moving into the corridors, it is always mind-boggling that we are losing so much so quickly.
Lest we forget, some of the harmful invaders are not plants. This dying pine is stricken with a fungal disease, white pine blister rust. Since its introduction around the turn of the century, this forest pathogen has devastated millions of acres of susceptible five-needle pines in western forest and our Sierra Nevada bioregion. Certainly other weeds, pests, and pathogens have yet to make a beachhead here. Many efforts profiled in this program have been late responses to colossal infestations. Yet by being based on adaptive management, which continually refines itself by monitoring results, these strategies are getting results. However, clearly the best strategy is to prevent the invasions from occurring in the first place. One wildland weed management model has emerged from the principles of wildfire suppression. There are many striking parallels between the spread and impacts of weeds and wildfires. Thus, the same control priorities used for wildfire suppression, starting with prevention, are being recommended for the better management of wildland weeds. Prevention is the first line of defense. As with fires, this means education and regulation. Detection and reporting are next. Land Management Agency employees are expected to report the size and location of fires. Training and incentives to look out for noxious weeds could then facilitate rapid response. Getting a jump on an infestation early can save millions of dollars and many ecosystems. Containment and control includes all the tools available, including cultural, chemical, mechanical, and biological methods to be used in the most integrated, effective way. This also includes mop-up, where the formerly infested areas are regularly inspected for new outbreaks. In firefighting, it's considered a disgrace to leave an area only to have the fire flare up again. Finally, there needs to be site rehabilitation or restoration. This is where we try to return the land to a more vibrant, diverse state. Sounds good, but will it work? And does it even matter? So much is changing so fast it is hard to keep track of this global homogenization. It could be decades before we really know what we are saving or have forever lost. If more of us care, these efforts will work. And for those who come after us, this does matter. The California Exotic Pest Plant Council, or CalEPSI, has been a very promising catalyst. Formed in 1992, they're bringing together agencies, industries, experts, and the public. They also want to better prepare coming generations.
We would like to develop a lesson plan, a lesson package for public school teachers to use to teach kids in the state about invasive plants and the impacts that they have.
And remember, the individual really can make a difference.
If an invasion is damaging or would be damaging and is just starting, and an individual gets in there, rallies forces and stops it, you've changed the local environment for the better for 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, forever.